From Courtside the Virtual Hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, episode number 398. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host is Derek. You know him in the forum as D43 and D4384 on Twitter.
I'm happy to be here again. Our NBA Live 10 semifinal series kicked off tonight.
It did.
And through artifacts, through freezing, we're playing it over Parsec. Through me being scared that it was going to freeze and crash all game, we got through it, and game one is in the books.
We did. It's overdue. We have. It's been hard to hook up to play recently, as far as being able to make time, of course. But technically, we have been able to, or we thought we were able to. A few technical difficulties at my end with the PS3 emulator, which we're playing on, of course. Hasn't happened before, and wasn't happening in our previous tests with the game, but performance was a little bit off, which is strange because my PC has been running very well since upgrading to Windows 10 at long last. Everything else, Steam games working fine and other emulators, but for whatever reason, maybe the config is not right. Maybe I need to do a fresh installation of the emulator and set everything up again. Won't take too long to do that, of course, but yeah, it was a little bit glitchy and a little bit hesitant in some cases, freezing up as it did. But we got through, and it was a pretty competitive game. But I was not at the top of my game, I must admit. And on top of that, you were playing some excellent defense, which made it very difficult for me to be at the top of my game.
Well, a couple things. I still think it's amazing, and we've talked about this several times now, that you live on the other side of the world. You're in Australia, and I'm in the U.S. An hour outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and we're able to connect and play a game like NBA Live 10, and for us to get through a game. And if it wasn't for the artifacts and the freezing that was happening, which I don't think had anything to do with Parsec at all, the game would have been incredibly playable. I obviously had some of that input lag that we've discussed, and some of my shots were on the way down and whatnot, and I've seen that happen to you when I host as well, and free throws were tough and everything, but it was playable, and I think that's great. And I actually was scared when I was up by 11 and I took a shot and left 4 seconds on the clock in the first half. There was only 4 seconds left in the first half, and you came down and you hit like a Steph Curry range 3 with Deng when I was in your face to pull within 8, and that actually worried me because I was like, oh, there goes my momentum. But yeah, my team's defense was really solid, and I felt like Chauncey Billups carried me a little bit in the first half with those threes.
Oh, it definitely made it tough for me, and your momentum to that point did pick up again very quickly. But it was still fairly competitive until I just you pulled away in the fourth. It was very tough to try and contend with that, and the defense was just excellent. Derek Rose, who is normally a bit cheesy, especially on, as we mentioned before, we're playing on Pro with the NBA Live 10 tournament, and some people might say, oh, Pro. We're doing that because over Parsec, it does compensate for any lag. It's a tournament for fun. Obviously, if we were doing a highly competitive tournament, we would ratchet up the difficulty somewhat, but it's done for all the games. Everyone has been playing on that difficulty throughout the tournament, simply so it can be a bit more of an offensive exhibition, I suppose, or just a little bit easier with that Parsec, with some of the input lag that will happen when we're playing peer-to-peer over Parsec, which is still very minimal, but it just makes it just a little bit more fun for a fun and casual tournament like this. But it was a great win by you. Once again, we were doing the sporting thing when a few things went wrong with backcourt violations. You got one call on you where you didn't even go backcourt. I don't know what happened there.
There was a lag spike, so I didn't even see it.
Okay, yeah.
Just ended up being I just saw on my end the backcourt violation call. So, it didn't even show up on my end, so I don't even know if it was real or not.
It looked fake to me. I didn't even see you go across backcourt, so that's why I handed it back, because that was definitely not a legitimate call. It happens from time to time in Live 10. It is a wonderful game, but not by no means a perfect one. But of course, even today, we have issues in games, which we'll be talking about later on in this episode. But it was fun to get back to Live 10. It's been a while. We had such a fun time with it over the past few months, or maybe not the last couple of months, but certainly this year it's been one of our mutual retro kicks, obviously. And playing with those retro teams and seeing that we can actually transfer rosters between the emulator and the physical PS3. And you and I have been talking off air about possible modding possibilities if we could ever, even if we can just manipulate the rosters and not use any custom artwork, what we could possibly do if we can find a way to edit those rosters. We can make rosters that could be used with both the emulator for tournaments such as this, and also put up in the download section for the physical console as well.
Yeah, a couple things I wanted to point out. First off, I didn't even say who we were using for those people who may have not heard about the tournament or the prior episodes. Or
of course,
listened to prior. Yeah. Andrew's using the Bulls, and I'm using the Nuggets. I've always been a fan of those Nuggets teams. And, so that's that. As far as the fantasy rosters, I think that it's crazy that we can swap a roster between, PS3 and the PC version, and go back and forth that way. I still wish that there was a way for us to mod the game and add in new classic teams and just do complete rosters with all the art and all of that stuff. And maybe we'll figure that out down the road. But like you had stated, what's really cool, we talked about this before the call, is we can technically release rosters because we can release the file that we could create on the PS3 and whatnot. We can actually release rosters in the community.
Yeah.
And in the NLSC. And I think that's awesome because that game came out in 2009. And the ability to release NBA Live 10 rosters in 2021 and 2022 for the community to enjoy, I think people will download them. I think it's fun.
I think so too, and especially if it works with both the original physical copy and an emulation as well. People can enjoy that either way.
Right, exactly. So if they, don't have the emulator working, they can get it to work on their PS3, right?
Exactly.
So that's that which is amazing, right? And I think a lot of people do have trouble getting that RPCS3 emulator to work, the PlayStation 3 emulator. I know a few people on Parsec that have issues with getting it to run. I know that the gentleman who made it to the finals, Cavs 4872, he has a decent computer, but it doesn't run the game or any games on that emulator well, so he can't host. A few other people that were part of this tournament can't run the emulator well, so it's good that I was able to host. So it's definitely a little bit more intense on somebody's computer, on their system.
It is, but, and it's strange because actually there's a recent post that now that emulator does boot every single game from the PS3 library, which is, again, such a tremendous accomplishment for the team making that emulator, and hats off to them, and we thank them for their contributions to our gaming fun, of course. But I have been able to run it in the past. It's the session we had before we started recording. It was having those artifacts and the freezing and something. It's not happy with my video card at the moment. Maybe it's a case of changing the configuration, updating my drivers, whatever. I will continue to troubleshoot that in between now and our next game. But apart from that, it was working fine before. And of course, that's always the frustrating part when an update comes through and something stops working. But we'll get there. We'll give it a shot for sure. We know that it works when you're hosting. Again, it's very confusing because my hardware should be able to handle it and has been able to handle Parsec surprisingly well in some of our previous sessions, but nevertheless, it did work, sort of, and I think people have really enjoyed the tournament, and it's stalled a bit, we must admit, but we're right there. We're picking up our series, as you said, and one of us will be making it through to the finals to face Cavs, and yeah, that will be interesting. Yeah,
I mean, it's been tough to find time to play. It really has. Life does get in the way sometimes. Priorities can change in an instant, and responsibilities can change in an instant, and it has been tough for me to find time, especially to play with you, because our time window isn't big, because you live on the other side of the world and we're separated by so many hours. And like right now for me it's 1:02 a.m. and so 1 o'clock in the morning. And what is it for you?
Just past 4 p.m. Just past 4 p.m.
Right, exactly. So that gives you people an idea, the listeners an idea of how hard it can be sometimes for Andrew and I to, get together and play.
Oh,
or
absolutely. I mean, on weekends it's not as bad, but obviously the lockdown is opening up here in New South Wales, so I'm back to work. I'm self-employed, but I'm actually able to travel around the city again, so I'm able to see my clients and go out there and do repair jobs on site. So yeah, before when we're all kind of in lockdown and just chilling at home, I was able to jump on and play with you in the middle of the afternoon my time because I'm self-employed. Well, I mean, I suppose as self-employed I could do it at any time, but I do need to work and earn money. But when I couldn't go out, I'd be able to just say, hey, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I've had lunch. You're online. It's evening your time. Let's play. Bit harder now that I'm back at work.
Right. I think that I'm still just thankful for the fact that we can do this.
Definitely.
I'll say it over and over again. Just the fact that we can even say, "Hey, why don't you host your home games?" And I'm glad that you upgraded to Windows 10.
It was time. Yeah.
It was time. It was definitely time, and you're up and running now, and your games that you wanted to work on it, I believe, work on it. So we're in good shape.
Bethesda's even pushed through a couple of updates for Fallout 3, so to remove the games for Windows Live, so it actually works fine on Windows 10 now. So that's a plus. So that was one of the few games that I was a bit worried about because there were some issues with 10, but it's working fine. I do need to troubleshoot some of the really old games like the Live 2000, 2001, 2003, and 2004 because they all use the secure ROM driver, which is depreciated in Windows 10. It's been removed, so there are workarounds to do that. So I need to set them all up again. But again, that's a very simple worst case scenario. I can set up a virtual machine with VMware, play them that way. So yeah, it's been great. But I have actually been playing a little bit of On Fire Edition by myself, perhaps because of me missing our sessions.
I do miss the road trip that we were on, and we were making so much progress. And I don't remember what level I am on there. But I know that we were making a lot of progress. Yeah, I mean, I really like that game. We need to get back on the road trip. It's good that you have that to fall back on. And I will say this, there's a small difference between, actually kind of sizable difference, with our playing habits that make it okay for you to, and fun for you to jump into that against the computer and by yourself. Me growing up with my two brothers all my life, I play video games with them. You know what I mean? Like 99% of the time. And doing something like On Fire Edition solo for me, and doing it against the computer, that wouldn't be fun for me.
Right.
Really at all. So you definitely have that advantage over me, as far as you're a little bit more flexible in that way. You can jump into a game like On Fire Edition or even a game like NBA 2K22, probably not the PC version, but the next gen version and whatnot, and jump into a game against the computer or jump into my career and be like, hey, you know what I mean? I'm enjoying myself. But that would be tough for me.
No, definitely. And it is what you're used to. I mean, I'm very used to that solo playing. Even my franchise gaming has been me against the CPU and just me indulging my GM fantasies rather than playing cooperatively or even competitively as you have done with your brothers. So it's definitely why I can enjoy that gameplay against the CPU more. Because I'm a weird collector, a crazy collector, as you know, and as you can relate to. When I got my PS3 when a friend gifted it to me, I actually did build up my collection again. I went and got On Fire Edition digitally, as it's still available, and NBA Jam and the Live and 2K games, and of course the college basketball games as well on that platform, which was the main reason I wanted a PS3 in the first place. But because I rebuilt my collection, now I've got that road trip to play through on the PS3 version of On Fire Edition as well. So I thought I'd do that. And here's something interesting I found. You remember how the Jam challenges that are showing up for you, but they're not showing up for me on my Xbox 360 version for whatever reason?
Correct. Yeah.
They're showing up for me on PS3. So I've been able to take advantage of them on PS3, which gives you extra XP and level up quickly, which is why I'm actually now at level 30 on PS3 and still at about level 26 playing through Road Trip again on 360. I have a feeling it's because my progress was wiped due to a bug with the 360 version, and I've had to start again, but the challenges, I think I completed them before, but when that progress got wiped, I'm back to level 1, but that part doesn't come back. I'm not exactly sure what's happened there, but I think that's a big part of it. But I've had those challenges to play through on PS3, and it's made it much quicker to get through to level 30. Unlocked the NBA Street Team, and I have to say, because we're looking to do that on our road trip, and I don't want to put a downer on that, Derek, but I was kind of disappointed with the Street Team playing with them finally.
It doesn't matter to me that much, to be honest with you, how well they play, because we have so many options. Like teams, we've been having fun using the mascots. We've been having fun using Julius Erving and Daryl Dawkins. We've been having fun using Kemp and Payton and the Bird and Garnett, or Bird and Allen and whatnot. There's just so many teams that I live with it. But I am surprised that they're a little bit underwhelming, because you would think that they would be fantastic, based on those original characters and whatnot. Personally, we talked about this off air. NBA Street Volume 2 is, in my opinion, hands down the best Street game.
I think it's the peak. I think it's the peak of the series. I like Home Court more than you do, but the first one is solid but a bit shallow. V3 lost Jordan and a couple of other modes. Home Court I like, but I can see why you don't. Volume 2 is where it's at.
It's not that I don't like Home Court. I just don't think it stacks up to Street Volume 2.
Fair.
I think Home Court, yeah. And the thing is, too, is they never brought back the NBA Challenge mode, and that's not in Home Court, is it?
No. Home Court's all about that campaign to put your home court on the map. Yeah.
See, so, NBA Street Volume 2 is great for my cooperative habits, because my brother and I just beat it again, by the way, recently. My brother Nick and I, we beat the whole NBA Challenge mode, where you play every team, in each division. But in the other games, in the original Street and Street Volume 3 and, Home Court, there is no co-op mode outside of just playing regular exhibition games. So there's nothing we can really sink our teeth into. So that's a turnoff for us. And that's why we haven't been putting those games on.
Oh, no doubt. That again speaks to the difference in how we grew up playing basketball games. I obviously played co-op with my cousin, as I've mentioned many times before, my cousin Clinton, and especially Jam Tournament Edition. But a lot of other games I'm able to enjoy solo, because he was only here in the school holidays, or maybe a weekend here or there when he came down. So, yeah, we grew up playing games so differently that I wouldn't have even thought about no co-op mode, because I've never really played those games co-op to begin with. But that is a huge oversight, and we do see that even games today. I mean, how much more fun would my team be for you, especially if you could get your brothers to join in with you for those challenges?
Talked about that. My Nick and I talked about that, and he would jump into it because he likes the card collecting aspect. I mean, we grew up collecting cards, right?
Of course.
Love Legends and all that stuff and whatnot. If my team was two players, and I've suggested this for years, remember, I've usually put it on like wish lists as well. If my team was two players, we'd be diving into that and playing it constantly. One of the reasons why I haven't been playing much my team on NBA 2K22, outside of not having as much free time lately, is because I have to play it by myself. And my brother's been falling asleep a little bit earlier and whatnot, so he hasn't been up to watch me play and all that stuff. And it just isn't that fun for me to sit there and play against bots. You know what I mean? If I'm going to play against bots, I'd like to have somebody play with me against bots. Or I'd like to play against another human. So that lack of cooperative play in my team hurts the mode for me in a big way.
I mean, if you want that online, you want that multiplayer experience, you could build up a player and go online and play in the rec. You could also drive a nail into your foot with a hammer. That may be just as much fun.
That doesn't interest us at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So maybe not an option. I did want to mention about the Street Team, because they have Stretch and they have Prodigy, and they have two characters which I believe are from V3, Fat, that's PH Fat, and Monster. They don't have Drake or Bonafide or DJ or Biggs or Takashi from the original. So some of those classic characters from the first couple of games aren't there. Stretch obviously is the mascot, the face of Street, if you will. And he's in the game. Prodigy is good, but he's very short, and he's the release they gave him, because of course you remember they do have different shot releases in On Fire Edition, which is cool. But the one they gave him, combined with his height, makes him very difficult to not get swatted a lot. So they're not as I don't know. I guess because it's such a grind in a way to get to level 30. then to finally get the team. I was hoping they'd be a bit more powerful, but it's still fun to have.
The problem with short players in NBA Jam on Fire Edition, especially if they have a low release or one where they're not getting off the ground much at all, they get blocked constantly when you play on the higher levels. You know what I mean? Where the higher levels where they don't fall for fakes. When you're doing the gold challenges and whatnot, or even the silver challenges.
And they just shove. They shove instead of going for the fakes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they're weaker too. So they're losing the ball off the shove and they're getting blocked and all of that stuff. So it does make it tough. Gary Payton is just tall enough where I don't struggle. You know what I mean? With him, I feel like that's our best duo still.
Oh, the Sonics, yeah.
Payton and Kemp. But height is an issue. And then, as we noticed, when somebody's tall, you can just be completely dominant at the hoop, like when we played against Tim Duncan and David Robinson. So I do like that differential, though, in that game. For an arcade game, that's pretty sweet, if we're being honest.
It gives you a reason to use different teams as well. And try and get that good matchup.
Yeah, it creates a balance that I think is really good. Honestly, we like I said, we got to get back on that game because we were having a ton of fun with it. And you know what? With all things being said, and us using Parsec for the large majority of it, we've actually played a lot this year.
Oh, we have.
We've played a lot of games and a lot more than we ever would have dreamed of before. So I'm happy about that.
And I've got on a couple of extended retro kicks, obviously, with 06 on 360, Live 10, as we mentioned, 2K14 most recently. And it goes back to the way I've been playing games in recent years because I've been playing so much my career where you've got to grind to get to a player up to where it needs to be, and then I'm playing online and playing more and more NBA games in my career, 12-minute quarters. I don't always have the time to switch around or switch back to go back to an old game like I really would like to outside of doing so for Way Back Wednesday and spending some time with it and then going back to the current one. Going on those extended retro kicks has been very satisfying to play some different games this year and really dip into my collection beyond content creation, just for my own enjoyment. And of course, it's led to content creation because of my passion for those games and seeing them in a new light, especially 2K14 and, well, actually all the games that I've really had a long revisiting with this year, which has been really satisfying, quite honestly. I am getting back to 2K22 now, a little bit of my team, but of course the season has just tipped off, so we should have, I believe the latest roster is accurate as of opening night. I do need to double check that, but I'm ready to start my NBA because I'm very keen to get back into that experience.
My brother and I actually were talking about it tonight on 2K22 Next Gen. We're going to try to start a season with current teams because the classic teams are just all messed up, right?
Yeah.
Classic teams and all-time teams are just so poorly done that we're not even going to do it. We find it kind of insulting and whatnot. So we're going to, and they just don't play well on the floor, and it's not a fun experience and just so unrealistic. So what we're going to do is we're probably going to start a My NBA against each other. He's going to use the Warriors more than likely, and I'm stuck on who I'm going to use. I'm not sure at this point. I don't really like the Celtics team that we have. I don't really like the NBA much today, as you know.
That's a barrier. That's a barrier to get into the current games as well. Because I mean, if like a Live 10, for example, we were both very passionate about the NBA at that time. Your Celtics were doing quite well. My Bulls were a young team on the rise. We were very familiar with the rosters and the teams at that time. So stepping back, and I've mentioned this before, the whole interactive almanac aspect of old games. Not only do we have the greater appreciation after we've played those games and see those stronger points that we may have missed back in the day, or we're looking at them with fresher eyes and lower expectations, and of course we do see some errors as well, some problems as well, but as well as the nostalgia for the on-court experience, the virtual hardwood experience, there is that nostalgia for the NBA at the time. And if you don't feel passionate about the NBA currently, it's very hard to want to get into a My NBA. And fortunately for me, the Bulls are doing quite well after a 3-0 start, and I'm liking the team they've put together. So I do want to play with them. But if you're not into it, and of course I do have my gripes with the current state of the NBA and the current style of play, but I am a bit more excited because of the Bulls looking like a decent team for the first time in years. So I'm perhaps a bit more excited than you are about that. But I think that'll be great. And playing against your brother, you've got that, and you've got the good-natured trash talking, and you've got what you can do with the teams. If you do that current My NBA, would you both make any deals? Would you be looking to make changes for your respective teams?
Well, a few things. It has absolutely nothing to do with how well the Celtics are doing. It has nothing to do. I don't care if they went 82-0. I don't care if they broke the Warriors record. I don't care about that. It has zero to do with them winning games, and it has everything to do with just the style of play in the NBA today.
Sure.
And the league direction, and it being less and less about basketball and all of that stuff. And, the fundamentals of the game, being lost, and the variety of the game being lost, and all of that stuff. And the fact that, like, I'm not attached to any of the Celtics players, right? I'm not attached to any really of their personalities. I'm not attached to the style in which they play. All of that attachment that I've had in the past, when I was watching the Celtics through the 90s, when I was watching them through the 2000s, and whatnot, that's not there. Like, none of it. So I have no connection really with any of these guys. So for me, these are the two teams I'm looking at. I've been a fan of Brandon Ingram. I like Brandon Ingram. I was thinking about, and I do like Zion as well. I feel a little bad that he came into the season again overweight. That's going to be hard on his legs. He needs to get that figured out ASAP before he, ruins his career. But I do like Ingram and Zion. Those are two guys that I like. I would consider using the Pelicans. The other team that I was thinking about using was possibly Portland, because I've always liked Lillard and I've always liked his loyalty. I've liked some of his recent comments about loyalty and whatnot. I've also really liked CJ McCollum throughout his career. And, he's shown respect to past players and whatnot. And he seems to have a good head on his shoulders. And he's also loyal. I really like CJ McCollum. So it would either be Portland or the Pelicans, probably. As far as trades, so this is the way we plan on doing it. One thing that we always talk about is we would want to see what would happen in a season if a team was at full strength and they stayed intact for the whole season. Because what happens in the NBA now? Constant injuries, constant rest, load management, key players being out constantly, key players playing only 50 games or 55 games, sometimes less, and whatnot. And then, you have teams, players moving teams, changing teams constantly and whatnot. So what we like to do when we play the season is actually turn injuries off and we keep the rosters intact. And we play through the season with that mindset that this is what would happen if those players could play all 82 games and they were at full strength. So that's what we're probably going to do. We play every game against each other. It's 12-minute quarters on Hall of Fame and whatnot. And you know what? Hopefully we have fun with it. Hopefully we get into it and whatnot, because I do enjoy my NBA.
No, I absolutely understand where you're coming from on that, and it's an interesting scenario. And look, I have played around with such scenarios before. Of course, my 06 dynasty with the Bulls, I brought Sean Kemp back out of retirement. I lowered his ratings. Actually, I added him to the rosters first because he wasn't in there as a legend, and then I took him from the where I put him into the game in my current roster update, in updated legends as well. And that made it a very fun experience for me to do that and have an interesting scenario. I absolutely agree as far as having some kind of connection with the team, with the players. It's what made it so difficult to play with the Bulls in the early 2000s, not really feeling that was a very fun team to play with.
Yeah, I think the problem is that you have to understand how big of a Celtics fan and NBA fan I was. Okay, I think you kind of get it now.
Yeah.
Now that you know me as well as you do, and with all of our conversations on air and off air and whatnot, how much I studied the NBA and how much I loved the NBA and how much I was a Celtics fan. I talk about that 96-97 team. I talk about the 94-95 Dominique Celtics team, the early 2000s, mid 2000s, etc. It really bums me out the way I feel about today's product, because I was the biggest NBA and basketball fan that you would ever come across. Right. And it does make me kind of sad, too, that we didn't know each other during those times, because we would have had some amazing talks.
Oh, yeah.
About on-court action, and we would have sent jabs back and forth. Imagine knowing each other during that Celtics-Bulls series.
Oh, 2009. Yeah. Wow.
The 2009 series. Imagine if we knew each other and we were talking and we had to do podcasts every week during that time. I mean, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
We would have been so into that. So yeah. For me, it's really tough having that mindset about the league today, and I wish I didn't, but I can't hide like the way I feel about it.
No, but and of course you have that going with 2K22, but or are looking to do so. But again, because you and I have these great collections and we have that appreciation for not just the games of yesteryear, but the NBA of yesteryear as well, we can go back and enjoy that. And some people would go back and say, "Oh, I don't want to play with this team, with these players that I hardly remember or don't know." Whereas we do remember a lot of even the bench warmers, going back to the 90s and when we first started watching. Obviously, Marty Conlon is my go-to mention at this point always. But even in the 2000s, just be able to go back and play those games and appreciate those rosters for the time, it is something that we are able to do that a lot of people aren't, and I understand why we are unique in that way. Or that sounds a bit more egotistical than I meant it to be, but it's we do have that passion for the gaming and the NBA, the games and the NBA at that time, so it is easier for us to go back. But speaking of which, obviously we have to finish up our Live 10 series, and you're up 1-0 now, so it's going to be interesting to see which if I can rebound.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, just because of the fact that that was a hosted game. But I think that you've beat me with the Bulls already.
Those Bulls?
When I was hosting.
Those Bulls or
not those Bulls, but I'm going to just say the Bulls to make it dramatic.
Sure.
But no, you beat me when I've hosted. So it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. And I think that I think the games will be really good. And I think tonight's game wasn't bad either. In fact, like I said, I was sweating a little bit when you hit that dang three at the end of the first half. But that's probably the best defense I'll play all series, to be completely honest. That was stifling. And this is a game that's very hard to block dunks. And I'm pretty sure I blocked 2 of Derrick Rose's dunks. And I believe I blocked 2 with Chris Anderson. Which, by the way, what a key guy to come off the bench, right? You want somebody to stuff at the rim. Having
Birdman,
having him at the rim definitely didn't hurt in that game. So no, I think it'll be a good series.
And there were a couple of good moments. It's a shame that the visual glitches and the odd freezes, because whenever it happened, I was looking over at my hard drive light and I'm saying, no, it's not flickering. It's not something going on in the background of the of a program loading or something. So it's not that. So it must be something with the rendering. It's not happy with the settings. We'll get it sorted one way or the other, and we'll complete the series. See how epic we can it turns out to be. Sure, there'll be more highlights. Speaking of which, of course, as always, the top 10 came out this week that you put together, the NLC top 10 plays of the week. Some pretty awesome highlights as always. That MJ dunk, which was kind of like an air up there dunk, quite frankly. His anus up there.
I don't like that, what they did with the All-Star game. So remember I told you on the prior podcast that my brother and I were getting up to the All-Star game?
Yep.
On our My NBA. So we got there, obviously, because that highlight's in there. We're 60-0, so we've played 60 games, all 12-minute quarters on Hall of Fame. And one thing that they do with the All-Star game, and I don't know if they did this last year because we didn't get to that point, but they put the street dunks in the All-Star game. And so you got Jordan out there doing 720s. Not saying he couldn't do it maybe if he wanted to. I mean, he had hang time for days, but you never saw Jordan do that dunk. But yeah, there's just some wild street dunks that you do in the NBA All-Star game, in NBA 2K22, because they put the street stuff out there. And when I say the street stuff, you know what I mean, the blacktop dunks.
They're normally playground and blacktop, yeah. And of course, this has been the problem with NBA Live in 18 and particularly 19, putting the street moves and in the NBA part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's a good look. And sometimes you're playing during the season too, and you're just trying to dribble or change directions, and they do some street ball blacktop move that you didn't initiate. It just happens automatically. So yeah, it can get a little frustrating. But actually, there's my 2 favorite highlights in the top 10. One of them is one with my 2 brothers and I were playing NBA 2K17 using that makeshift Celtics team, where D Brown gets a steal. Mark was on D Brown. Nick collects the ball after it's tipped by D Brown, and he's locked on Paul Pierce. He gets it up to me at the other end of the court, and I'm locked on Dominique Wilkins. So all 3 of us were part of this play. And then Mark runs down the floor with D Brown, and I dish it off to him, and he throws it down in traffic. It's just really cool to be able to do that locally, all 3 of us on the sticks. You know what I mean? So having that in there felt great. And then the other highlight that I thought was awesome was College Hoops 2K8. VF Baller got the #1 spot, and he's been awesome. He's like us. VF Baller and Nad B-Ball video games are like us. They collect and play all of these older games. Isn't that cool?
It really is. It's
they're posting the highlights on Twitter and they're talking about the games and posting screenshots. It's awesome.
It is, and we joke about being kind of odd in a self-deprecating way, but again, maybe we shouldn't, or maybe I shouldn't, because I'm the one who makes those gags. We should be normalizing it, as I've said before, and it's clear how much fun you can have playing an old favorite. I mean, can you expect them to play like more up-to-date games, or even games that came out a few years after? No, you play them and enjoy them for what they are. But some of them, as we've found out, are very fun and hold up very well these days. And it's great to see those games in the top 10 and people putting those highlights on Twitter. The one from And1 Street Ball, again, that's awesome too.
That was a session between myself and the Live King, actually, over Parsec. And the cool thing about And1 Street Ball is there's a negative and a positive. The negative about And1 Street Ball is there's no co-op mode outside of just playing exhibition games. So that kind of sucks. But the cool thing about it is they have like over 20 players. I don't know how many Street Ball players. I'd have to look it up. There's just a laundry list of Street Ballers that you can choose from. Real ones. Real Street Ballers. I believe that his dunk on that highlight reel was with the Main Event, who we all know from the End1 tour and whatnot. But it's just putting your team together is so fun. Like I usually choose Escalade because he's a monster around the hoop. And it's really fun to use him. And, at the point guard, I'll put the Professor there and whatnot. And it's just, they have all of these Street Ball legends. And, congrats to them for, and kudos to them for, getting the permissions to put all those guys in there and then putting them in the game. And the game plays pretty well. But yeah, I really like that highlight was actually from a session of Parsec, a Parsec session between me and the Live King.
That's really cool. Again, that's a solid game that I've have actually drafted a retrospective of. That will be in Wayback Wednesday feature at some point in the near future, because I did pick that one up at a pretty good bargain on eBay, actually, that price, especially for eBay prices and the way they're really inflating now. I did want to circle back to the topic we had last week about possible rebranding of an EA Sports sim game if it's not going to come back as NBA Live, because we talked, of course, about the possible rebranding of FIFA with the lack of exclusivity moving forward with the license, and we have a few more suggestions from our listeners. Leader of the Foot Clan at aka _Chuck_Cross on Twitter. Shout out to you as always. ESPN NBA 23, or indeed Lakers versus Bucks, throwing it back to the Lakers versus Celtics.
ESPN NBA 2023, I actually like that. It makes me think a little bit too much of the old ESPN NBA 2K games that came out, like ESPN NBA 2K5. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't think that's a bad one. And they do have the ESPN license. Unfortunately, they don't have Breen and Van Gundy anymore, which I think was a huge mistake, and I would have paid those guys. It's not like EA doesn't bring in enough money. I know that they wanted to do dynamic updates throughout the season and update the commentary, but I'd rather have just basic Breen and Van Gundy commentary than Jay Williams.
I mean,
let's be completely
even the new Jay Williams lines are still Jay Williams, thus they are stale and unappealing by default. So no, I absolutely agree. NBA Live BR, NBA Live Brazil at NBA Live BR on Twitter. Shout out to you as well. EA Basketball, or name the game after the name of the year before the finals, just like the good old days. So again, it would be, of course, Bucks versus Suns or Suns versus Bucks. In this case, as of last season. So again, bringing back that naming convention would be interesting.
No, I think that would be a good idea too, and that keeps it fresh every year, right? So unless the Bucks play the Suns again, and then you call it Bucks versus Suns, 2024 the rematch or something like that, or 2023 the rematch.
It would have been kind of tough when the Warriors and Cavs have played each other 4 straight years. That would have been a bit tough to do.
The rematch. No, but I think those are really good suggestions, and I like how it brings back that old flavor. Obviously, we remember Bulls versus Blazers, Bulls versus Lakers, Celtics versus Lakers, stuff like that. So no, I think that's a really good idea, and I would be all for that.
We have Franchise Fanatics Franchise Fanatics _, on Instagram. NBA Evolution of the Game.
I like that one. I don't like the word evolution because of the way it's used, in order to try to discredit past eras. But no, I think that's a good one. You know how I came up with like it was something great. Like Supreme NBA or NBA Supreme. I like the original titles. I like thinking outside the box and whatnot. So, I had stated what NBA Countdown on the last one. So yeah, like titles like that have never been used before. That idea hasn't been used before. I love ideas like that. So no, I think that's a good one.
And the last one is from @VF Baller, who we mentioned. Shout out to you, and of course the owner of the number one play of the NLC Top 10 Plays of the Week countdown this week. EA Sports presents NBA Fastlane 2023. NBA Fastlane.
I mean, you'd have to bring back the Eminem song, right? Fastlane. That was on 2K13, I believe.
14. Oh, no, 13. You are right, 13, yeah.
NBA 2K13, Eminem Fastlane.
2K14 was Not Afraid by Eminem. That's the one.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, no, I think that one would work. I don't know how popular it would be.
My issue with that, because it is a cool name, the only possible problem is that WWE has a pay-per-view called Fastlane every year, so they might have some kind of trademark on that. But
yeah, it also makes me think NASCAR or like racing. So, games like when you can put like a play name or like a type of basketball terminology in the title, it can sound really cool. Like, for example, one of the coolest video game names ever is NBA Give and Go. That is a great basketball name for a video game, NBA Give and Go. I'd have to do a little bit more thought on it, but it would be cool to put like a basketball action into the title.
Like NBA Chucking Threes 2023?
NBA Step Back 2023. NBA Flop 2020.
Do you think NBA Live is going to want to rename to NBA Flop after some of their titles?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but it goes back to what we said. It's harder than you think to come up with a marketable title that hasn't been used before.
How about not NBA Elite 2023?
So what's the synonym for Elite? NBA Very Good 2023.
Yeah. NBA Better Than Elite 2023.
Super Elite 2023. Yeah, we could go on and on, but thank you to everybody who suggested those titles. Keep the interaction coming. We love to hear from our listeners. And once again, topic suggestions and mailbag questions moving forward. Podcast at nba-live.com, or hit us up on any of our socials with your, again, topic suggestions or questions you'd like us to turn into a discussion. And finally this week, Derek, we do have some news to cover here. The latest patch for NBA 2K22, both current gen and next gen, came through this week. And a bit of controversy on current gen, as it appeared to remove badges from my players. And 2K are saying that this is simply a cosmetic issue that they're working on. It looked like people were being... the meta had been adjusted, or that a respec was in order, or maybe it was something to do with the rebirth. Season 2 rebirth, where you could get a new player and get them immediately up to date. So it looked like they were changing the meta on people, and people were not happy because obviously people have spent a lot of time grinding or indeed paying to upgrade their player thus far through the first 6 weeks of the game being out. 2K again saying that it is simply a cosmetic issue and that the badges are still there and the effects are still there. They're trying to fix it. But it wasn't a good look. And some of the responses from 2K reps on Twitter, Derek, predictably, were lacking in the goodwill that 2K has kind of lacked in recent years.
The problem is that, number one, they didn't act on it fast enough. Number two, the communication wasn't clear and concise about the issue, and the communication wasn't being presented by the influencers on social media or the major NBA 2K account. So, like the big NBA 2K account. And people were upset about that because what ended up happening is people thought that they lost their progress, that a lot of them paid for. And it really is troubling to see how many people in the comments say that they paid for that progress, right? Like, you see the comments and they're saying, what about the money I spent on this? What about the money I spent for this progress? And all of that stuff. You guys, you had people saying that they would sue NBA 2K for this and all of that stuff. Obviously, a lot of, just being angry. They wouldn't actually sue,
Idle
but they're
threats,
saying,
yeah.
right, exactly. So it is really troubling to see how many kids, and I do say kids because a lot of them are kids, are putting their money into this game and continue to do so in order to progress forward. But the panic that set in, you could see it in the comments. People were like, you guys took our badges away. All that grinding that we did and all that money we spent was all for naught. You better give us them back and everything. So then I saw like Ronnie 2K in the comments trying to say that, he was trying to say things like, they're not gone. They'll, they're hidden, basically, is what he was saying. They're there, but you can't see them. And we're trying to fix that. And I'm sorry, but Ronnie 2K is the last person in the comments that's going to calm anybody down, right? Yeah. Like, his presence isn't calming for these people. So, like you had stated, there wasn't like any feel of goodwill or anything there. They were just like, oh, look, Ronnie's just trying to like put out some flames on social media.
And look, it could be true. I do not, because I've not been playing my career, so I can't say one way or the other whether the badges are still having effects. Some people are saying that they're not. So it does make you wonder whether they've tried to make some quiet changes to the meta under the hood. And they have been very quiet about some of the changes they've made over the years. So have they tried to make that change, and now they're trying to backtrack under the hood and fix that, and claiming that it was a cosmetic issue? I mean, I'm not saying that they did, but it's unfortunately, it's possible, or at least you could see it happening, because this comes back to a big problem with 2K, is that they don't have the goodwill. So the fact that I'm even entertaining such a paranoid idea of what they might have done, it speaks to the lack of goodwill that they've fostered over the last few years.
Well, remember, we said that about the broadcast camera, though, and I said I didn't want to be that guy to say it, but remember when I zoomed out and I showed you all the stuttering that was happening on the broadcast cam, and then the game was released without a broadcast cam in my NBA, and broadcast generic being removed, and then there was just silence for a couple of weeks, right? And that's the type of thing that did they do that on purpose because they were worried about how they would be looked at because of that stuttering issue? Are they trying to hide this because they're embarrassed about it, and they're not being transparent to people because they don't want to admit that there's a performance issue, etc.? So they're not including it in the modes, etc. So unfortunately, over the years, because of the lack of transparency, and because of even the lies that we've heard through the developer blogs, and after a game cycle has finished, what they say about the stuff that everybody was complaining about, they wait till after the game cycle to admit it, etc. No, there's a lot of people don't trust 2K in these instances, and you and I are in that crowd.
And look, even if that is just speculation, which it is, the way they were trying to put out that fire, the defensiveness, which, look, I understand defending your product, and certainly a lot of people, when they come at you with some of the threats or the language they use, which is not constructive, I can understand standing your ground and pushing back a little bit. But at the same time, this is a very big issue that looks like, and even if it's not as bad as it seems, even if it is a cosmetic issue, it's still bad, and it has still created panic for a game that people are putting money into. And just as a sidebar here, because remember what people are always saying, you don't have to spend, but clearly a lot of people do. So, I mean, that speaks for itself, does it not? The fact that people are spending even though they quote-unquote don't have to, well, maybe they do have to, or maybe it's very strongly encouraged. That's the point that I continue to make.
We talked about it. If they want to get to the point where they're having fun and they're up to par and all of that stuff, a lot of people do have to do feel they have to spend in order to not waste their time completely or spend months trying to get up to a level to achieve that, right?
Exactly.
So, and which is where the intentional grind comes in.
And people are again, if people are spending that much money, then it's clear that that's pretty much the way to have fun, the way to get there and not have to grind and endure an unenjoyable grind, basically, which is again the whole point. You don't have to, but you probably will need to, and it's not very fun if you don't, and that's the important thing. But even putting that aside, the way that it's been addressed by some of the 2K reps on Twitter, and they've pointed out, oh, look, because people are saying, why didn't you test this? Well, we can't test everything. We can't find it, and it's true. It is technically true what they're saying, but 2K just does not have the goodwill to come back at people saying that, because people they have raised the price of the game. They have not lowered the price on current gen. They still have pushier and pushier recurrent revenue mechanics. They have changed things under the hood, and tried to do it very quietly. There was the issue with my team a couple of years ago where the Pink Diamond LeBron card locker code leaked, and they quietly removed it from everybody's accounts. Tried to do it so that nobody would notice. The people had already applied consumables to Diamond consumables to. So the way they've handled their business has not been transparent. It has not inspired goodwill. So you don't really get to come at people and waggle your finger and say you don't understand how games are developed. And some people don't have a full appreciation or understanding of game development. And yes, of course, issues will happen, but you don't get to be defensive about this. It is absolutely the wrong approach. I saw that and I was disgusted, because you don't. They've treated us as consumers quite badly, and of course, yes, we keep buying the games, and as so many people do. So maybe it's on us at the end of the day. But I saw some of those responses from Ronnie 2K and other reps, and I thought this is just not the way to address it. You are reading the room terribly. This tone is not appropriate. This tone is not good. For the justifiable outrage that people are feeling, you do not respond in this way. This makes you look even worse.
No, exactly. And, look at 2K18 and before 2K17 was taken off Steam. Those games still being priced at $59.99. Give me a break. That's why people don't have good, like stuff like that. That's why they don't have goodwill towards 2K. Why is NBA 2K18 still $59.99 on Steam when it's been stripped of half of its modes? Same when 2K17 was on there, 2K19 and whatnot. When the servers are down, you can't play my team, etc. You can't play my career online, and those games are still $59.99. Like stuff like that. That's the stuff. Those games should be on sale constantly, or they should be quite a bit cheaper and whatnot. They're old versions of NBA 2K, and they're always that price. And that's just a small example of something that really bothers me.
But it's little things like that. The fact, I did an article on this, that the Legend Edition of 2K18 was still available a couple of years after the servers were shut down, when half of in fact, all of its pre-order bonuses from that Legend Edition are VC related and my career related for the neighborhood, all of which were no longer available in the game. Yet they were still selling that expensive version.
I bet you anything people bought it.
Yeah. And then couldn't use any of the bonuses. Yeah, absolutely.
It just drives me up a wall. And the thing is if you say something about it and you say something about it in the wrong community, you'll get basically crapped on as somebody who's just being a complainer.
You're a hater. You
don't need to get that game. Why not get the new game like everybody else?
And there's always they're dealing with a lot of crap on social media from people who are being very nasty and not interacting respectfully, which is true. But at the end of the day, they're the professionals, and the problem is that, okay, by all means, hit back at the people who are being disrespectful and toxic, right? But if somebody, the problem is the people that are coming with very fairly phrased and politely phrased complaints and questions, they're still getting that snarky comeback that the rude people are as well. So kind of everybody gets that comeback, and that's not fair. And that's what people say, well, F you 2K. This is how we don't feel that goodwill with the brand.
Yeah, the communication needs to be better. No, you can see that the goodwill for the brand has really gone sideways when you look at all the reviews and comments on Steam and whatnot. And we've talked about it over and over and over again, how that's a red flag. It's really frustrating to see it. And they don't even respond to me anymore. So, in the past, I believe I've gotten a response on something from Mike Wang. I've received a response from, I want to say it was Desar at one point, a couple of years ago, but they won't even respond to me anymore. I'll shoot a screenshot of feedback, or I'll make a comment and whatnot, and they're just like, I'm either muted or they're just like, screw him. So I don't even expect to get a response from them anymore.
No, it is very disheartening, and again, the people. It's just unfortunate that people that they are rightfully upset, but they still phrase it in a way that's fairly polite and very restrained, given how rightfully upset they are. And the condescending attitude when it's thrown back in their face is it's just very disappointing.
It really is. Maybe if it changes in the future, maybe if things get bad enough or another competitor gets into the space, maybe they change their approach. But right now they feel untouchable. And that's the way I look at it.
It's what it comes down to, absolutely. It also, however, Derek, makes me feel very happy that I'm not in that scene anymore, the My Career and the connected modes. I mean, I've had a lot of fun with those modes. As burned out on those modes as I felt, I really got into the 2K14 My Career and recently wrapped that up. I'm done with that now. But I just don't want to deal with it anymore. But of course, for the people who are dealing with it and playing those modes, I want them to be as great as they possibly can be. And issues like this, it's what we've always feared. Those post-release nerfs and the quietly changing things with the meta and the badges, and they've done that before with the ratings thresholds have changed for for animations and whatnot, and for badges, and people that have already made their builds are stuck with them because they designed it based on the meta that was there at launch. And of course, it costs money to make a new build. I know they've got this rebirth going on with the Season 2, which is... There's goodwill in that. And that's the frustrating thing, is that they will do that, but then they'll mishandle other situations. And it's just a real shame, because those modes are very capable of being a lot of fun. But again, there's all that focus on... There's this kind of shady stuff, and there's focus on cosmetic items over things like proper matchmaking and really making the scene a viable online competitive scene that is welcoming to all, with a proper leveling up system and grading and matchmaking. It's just a shame that we don't have that competition, as we've said so many times before, because we can see what's happened.
Yeah, I'll say again, and I've said this on many podcasts prior, even when we first started recording together almost 100 episodes ago now. I think that the game should remain release day gameplay unless there's something game breaking. That way the gameplay doesn't change in all the modes, and they don't break stuff within the game, and things like this badge issue doesn't happen and whatnot. All of these patches that nerf the gameplay and nerf aspects of the gameplay completely hurt your game and my team. They hurt your My NBA that you've already started and whatnot, because different happenings now on the court, and the game doesn't function the same. It affects your My Career. It just affects all modes. And unless it's game breaking, I just don't even think patches should exist. No, to be completely honest with you. And the games come out stronger by default if they feel the need to do 7, 8, 9, 10, patches within just like a couple months. So it needs to be better by default.
And see, if Mortal Kombat, for example, changes the meta in its online competitive scene, you haven't had to grind really hard to build up a character and upgrade attributes or buy them. There are purchasable consumables. There are current revenue mechanics in Mortal Kombat 11, because that is gaming in 2021, unfortunately. But as far as simply on the sticks online competitive play, if they change the meta, that's the same for everyone. It's the characters that you choose. And of course, it's unfortunate that if you are used to playing one way that you need to relearn, but at least that's relearning stick skills and adjusting strategy. It's not lost time or money as such. So that is the difference between that kind of online scene and the online scene in 2K. There's a lot of concepts mixed together in 2K with My Career and its connected modes, with the MMORPG and your traditional NBA sim. A lot of concepts just smashed together, and they don't always play together very well.
Right, and none of this stuff and all of these constant updates wouldn't be a thing without money being attached and greed.
Yeah.
It really goes back to that.
It does. But to end on a more positive note, Derek, what are you looking forward to playing on the virtual hardwood over the next week or so?
I'll probably start that My NBA with my brother on NBA 2K22 Next Gen, with him using the Warriors, and then me either using the Pelicans or the Trailblazers, go against each other and do that. We'll continue our Legends season where we're 60 games in as well. My NBA 2K17 weekend games have been great with my two brothers, all of us on the same team using the makeshift Celtics against, other teams in a fantasy draft with the greatest players of all time. So that's been really fun. So we'll be playing more of that. Other than that, I'd like to get back into doing more Parsec gaming, obviously continuing the NBA Live 10 series with you now that we have one game in and we kind of got our feet wet into the series. And as far as playing any more classic games, it's tough because my time is thin right now. So everything that I just committed to kind of, when I was just talking to you about that, I don't have much time for much else. I'd like to get back into playing NBA 2K19 with Stildo. We were having a lot of great games, and I posted some of them on my YouTube and on your YouTube as well. Or excuse me, the NLSC YouTube. But I just don't have as much time as I did before. So I've had to put that on the back burner, and that's kind of sucked. So we'll see what happens. What about you?
Well, I, of course, am looking forward to getting back into the Parsec sessions, NBA Live 10, getting our series is underway, as you said, so we'll hopefully have a very fun series moving forward with that. On Fire Edition with the road trip, playing with you, and also playing a little bit more on PS3 and unlocking the Street Team on 360 as well would be great. Obviously, the My NBA in 2K22 with the Bulls, I'm quite looking forward to, as long as the rosters are up to date, which I'll double check with that after we finish recording, actually, and make sure that they've come through and are properly updated. I might be able to start that this weekend or in the next couple of days. Retro, I have put 2K14 aside, and Live 10, apart from playing it with you, is kind of on the back burner as well. I do need to get some screenshots and possibly videos for upcoming features that I want to do for the NLSC, Way Back Wednesday and Friday 5, etc. So I will be replaying some older games there. Also, I've decided that the rest of this month I'll be focusing on getting some features drafted and scheduled, because November I really want to be working on some modding, because I have a couple of things that I want to come out by kind of as a Christmas gift, hopefully, if I can get everything timed right. But November I'm thinking of really working hard on the modding. So for the rest of October, which is just about a week now, I will be actually working on articles to get them done, and possibly some videos as well, and done and scheduled, ready for November, so that I can just stick to modding.
Yeah, you got a lot on your plate.
Plus, I want to do the top 25 games for our 25th anniversary as well. So hopefully I have some good features coming out over the next month or so. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of episode number 398 of the NLC podcast. We thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed joining us for a discussion of basketball gaming, the week in news, and also what we've been playing. The show comes out every Sunday on the NLSC, which is emmy-live.com, of course. You can also tune into the show on various podcatching apps and platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and Podcast Addict, just to name a few. On those platforms, search for NLC Podcast, look for our logo, and that will be us. As we always say, though, as long as you're tuning into the show each and every week and enjoying it, that is the main thing. And as we wrap up here, we also invite you to connect with us on social media. So, Derek, what are your handles and any other announcements you'd like to make before we wrap up here?
I'll say like I did on so many past podcasts, just keep sending me those top 10 highlights. I know that you guys are playing your basketball video games. I have the regular contributors each week, but I'd love to see your highlights and to be able to include them in the weekly top 10. You can find me at D4384 on Twitter, where I'm the most active, and where I will tell you that you need to stop disrespecting Clyde Drexler. I'll tell you that on that social media handle. D43G is my gaming channel. On Twitter, I'm on YouTube, D43, and then on the NLSC, D43, and I'm a team member over there.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC's handles on Facebook and Twitter are at the NLSC. We are NLSC Basketball on Instagram. Our YouTube is youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, give a look to the NLSC itself, emmy-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.